Good evening, members of the Council. May I lead you in prayer? Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, power and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. Please be seated. I've received apologies from Councillor Adrian Hughes and Councillor Shanila Miguel and Councillor Claire Sullivan. Are there any further apologies for absence?
Yes, Madam Mayor, from Councillor Sean Kesey. I'll do that one again. Kieran Casey.
Thank you. Are there any others? Councillor Thomas Russon. Thank you. Any prior declarations of interest made under the Members' Code of Conduct have been published online. Interests previously disclosed by members at meetings are recorded in the minutes in the White Book, which is also published online. All these interests will be taken as read. They are deemed as repeated at this council meeting. I now invite members to declare any additional interests.
There appear to be none, Madam Mayor.
I move that the minutes of the meeting held on the 4th of December 2023 be confirmed as a correct record and signed. Does the council agree? That is carried. It is my sad duty to report on the recent death of former councillor Christine Ray. Christine Ray served on the council from 1986 to 1990 and then 1994 to 1996. She represented Amblecote and Kingswinford North and Warheath. Can I ask the council to stand for a minute of silence as a mark of respect to Christine Ray? Councillor Baton.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I don't think that there are many councillors in this chamber who will actually remember Christine Ray as a councillor. I certainly don't remember in that capacity. But I knew Christine as she is a Labour member in St James's Ward, the ward I represent. And the first time I met Christine was at my first selection meeting in 2016. And after answering what I thought I'd done really well at answering all the questions from all the members around the table, Christine looked over her glasses at me and said, "Tell me why I should vote for you." And I have to say, that question completely threw me. And I was like, I don't really know, because I'm going to be the best. But I was absolutely floored by it. And it was, I realised very soon that actually Christine was going to be a very formidable member of the ward, and actually if she was on your side she was a real bonus and a real support to you. Over the coming years, Christine had stepped back from politics, but she took a very active role at Butterfield Court Tenants and Residents Association. I think she held both chair, treasurer and secretary at varying times there. And then in the Friends of Grange Park, and supported all of the community events that we did, particularly the Great Get Together. And And Christine was very, very community-minded. She had a community allotment. She wanted to do the best for people. She wanted to work with local schools and bring children onto the allotments. She had a lot of really good ideas. But sadly, in later years, health very badly let Christine down. She suffered from vascular dementia, and probably from 2020 onwards was no longer the Christine that everybody knew and loved. She very sadly passed away about 2 weeks ago, and she will be missed by her partner Terry, who also has played a very active role in various community groups alongside Christine. I will send around funeral details. They were confirmed late this afternoon, so I will send those around to those who did remember Christine. I think there were probably maybe 1 or 2 people in this room, but I did think it was very appropriate to raise a tribute to Christine. She was certainly a very active councillor in the 2 sessions that she did, and certainly continued that within her local community. So thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Bayton. Councillor Foster.
Christine in about 1997, and I didn't see much of her after then, but at the time she was the councillor for King Swinford North, and she was also very much involved in borough-wide politics. I think she was chair of what we would call in the Labour Party the Local Government Forum, which covers all wards in the borough. And she was, like many women councillors of that generation, and some of them are people that we do know, Rosemary Tompkinson, Rachel Harris, Margaret Wilson. She was really supportive, really encouraging about bringing new women on, and she's one of those women who encouraged me to stand for council the following year. What might not be known so much about Christine was that she has family members who are very much involved in local politics. So Beryl and Ron, her parents, were very active in the local Labour Party in Brierley Hill. Unfortunately, Ron has passed away. Beryl is still around, and I pay this tribute to Christine, but also the work that Christine's family has done for our party and for the community. And we are so sad for Beryl's loss, and we wish her strength and all the best in this very difficult time that she faces now. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Foster. Councillor Lowe.
Yeah, thank you very much, Madam Mayor. When I was I was still 5'4", so I was still a little, but I had an awful lot more hair than I have standing in front of you this evening. I joined the Labour Party in 1984 as a result of the miners' strike and as a result of what was happening in our communities at the time. And I saw the future was to get involved in my local community and try and right some of the wrongs. I say that because the ward that I was placed in was Amblecote Labour Party, and these were the days of John Simpson, the days of Rosemary Tompkinson, the days of 4.5-hour Labour Party meetings, the days of finishing that with a packet of pork scratchings and a pint of Banksy's Mild, even though I was 15 years old. And I raise that because the first campaign that I led was to get Christine Ray elected to this council in 1986. And all of us may not know Christine, but we'll all know the energy of our first election campaign, the early mornings, the late nights, the discussions, the debates, the agreements, the disagreements, and then the pride at Brierley Hill Town Hall, because that's where the count was taking place in those days. The pride of getting your candidate, your political party, elected against the odds. Amblecote, 1986, soon to be replicated in 2024. The reason I raise that is Christine was an activist. She wasn't always party political. We had big political disagreements. I was a left-wing firebrand. People say I've quietened down as the years gone on, but I've still got a soft spot for the nationalisation of the top 200 monopolies. Christine Ray definitely had a different view and a different way forward. As Kath has outlined, she became very passionate when she moved up towards Dudley in the Tenant and Residents Association. Many of us within this council chamber may not know Christine Ray, may not have heard until her sad demise and dementia took her. But every one of us, Madam Mayor, will be able to relate to that community activist, because each and every one of us wish to undertake in the communities we represent what Christine Ray attempted to undertake in her 2 stints in both Amblecote and King Swinford North and Warleaf. And she'll be a sad loss, because she was that what each and every one of us are, somebody who wishes to make their community a better place. So Christine, may you rest in peace. Thank you very much, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Lowe. As there are no other requests, I shall move on. The tickets are on sale for the annual Charity Ball and Civic Awards, which will be held on Friday the 19th of April 2024 at the Copthorne Hotel, Brierley Hill. Tickets can be purchased from the website mayorofdudley.org.uk. It would be great to have the support from around the chamber on that evening. There's also another announcement I'd like to make. There was an email that I circulated around all councillors regarding a former mayor and councillor, Steve Waltho, who is doing a crazy climb because he's just crazy. Even after going through a lot of problems with his health himself, he's still out there trying to do as much as he can for unfortunate people across the borough in whatever capacity. And he has kindly decided to split half of the funds that he raises to the Mayor's charity. So it would be really great if some of his colleagues, or you know, as many of you as possible, could support him on this crazy climb that he is about to undertake. No further comments to make, so I will move on to the statutory recommendations from external auditors. Can I welcome the representative of Grant Thornton to this council meeting and invite him to comment on the report? Andrew Smith.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So this report, just in terms of context, our responsibilities go beyond issuing an opinion upon the council's financial statements. We do also have wider powers that are set out in the Local Audit and Accountability Act 2014. And one of those powers is to issue what we call written recommendations or statutory recommendations. And I've concluded, having reviewed the finances of the council over the last few months, that it's appropriate now to raise a statutory recommendation to the council. And this really reflects the seriousness of the council's financial position and in particular the call upon reserves as part of the 24-25 budget, which is going to full council shortly. In the report, we set out some of the background to the recommendations. We have, as part of our previous work, commented upon the council's financial sustainability. And in that report, we've reported to the audit committee that we believe that the reserve levels of the council were very low and needed to be rebuilt and replenished. So obviously, once we were looking at the 24-25 budget, particularly the original version of that and the big call upon reserves, we decided that it would be appropriate to raise a statutory recommendation because we didn't believe that that was a prudent action to take. Now, I am aware that since we wrote this report that there's been some positive movement in the budget gap for 24-25, which is welcome. However, there is still a significant call upon reserves, and we believe that that call upon reserves would put the council in a very serious financial position, and the risk of a Section 114 notice needing to be issued in the next 12 to 18 months would heighten considerably, which is why we've raised this recommendation now. The recommendation is set out in the report and essentially comes in 4 parts. One is to maximise the opportunity to improve the 23-24 position as much as possible, and I believe there has been some positive progress on that. The other aspect of it is to essentially implement the controls that you would otherwise need to put in place if a Section 114 notice was issued, and that's really to kind of restrict any additional investment and to reduce spend going forward. The third strand is probably the most important strand, which is asking the Council to go further in the form of expenditure reductions or income generation. This, we believe, is really important because in order to avoid that risk of the Section 114 notice in the next 12 to 18 months, we believe that you need to minimise the use of reserves in 24-25. So whilst the budget that is currently being proposed is calling upon reserves, if the Council sets upon a programme of work to hopefully minimise that call upon reserves in 24-25, that would put the Council in a much stronger position as you head into future years and hopefully enable you to set legal balanced budgets going forward without needing to draw upon exceptional financial support from central government, and that is ultimately the main aim of what we're trying to recommend here. The fourth aspect of the recommendation is to create a contingency for 24-25, because it is our view, based upon previous track record and what is going on in the sector more generally, that there will be additional in-year pressures which have not been able to be forecast as part of the budget process. So we do believe that, as well as trying to reduce the call on reserves through additional savings, finding some additional savings to create a reserve, a contingency that can be held centrally to use and deploy where there are additional in-year pressures would be, again, another prudent measure that puts the Council in a better position going forward. So we do recommend to the Council that this recommendation is accepted, and I'll pause there before any questions or comments are made. Thank you.
A call on Councillor Steve Clark.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. First of all, I'd like to thank Andrew for coming in front of us today and also the report. Whilst none of us want to read a report like this, we are making sure that we are addressing the issues. I believe that we are addressing all of the issues that you have with us. I'll come back to those at the end when I sum up the report. But for now, Madam Mayor, members of the Council, I move that the recommendations in the report be approved and adopted.
Is there a seconder?
Seconded, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Shaukat Ali.
Thank you. If I can start by saying that the report by the external auditors and its findings are not merely concerning, they are extraordinarily damning, shedding light on the perilous state of the Council's finances. And in my 24 years as councillor, it's the first time the auditor has spoken at a council meeting, unless I'm wrong in my recollection. Madam Mayor, let us be under no illusion that this council stands on the verge of bankruptcy, and the time for denial by the Tory administration has long passed. Despite clear warnings, they chose to look the other way, ignoring the stark reality that confronts the council. The first alarms were sounded by the auditors in July last year, where they identified substantial risks to both the council's financial sustainability and governance. When we expressed our concerns and called for actions, unfortunately, our pleas fell on deaf ears as they chose to dismiss our concerns, burying their heads in the sand, showcasing a disconcerting level of incompetence and mismanagement. Madam Mayor, it wasn't until December that a sense of panic and urgency finally set in, despite the auditors and ourselves giving those early warnings. In their report, the external auditors explicitly stated, and I quote, "Members should recognise the scale of the Council's financial challenges," end of quote. The significance of these words cannot be overstated. It is alarming that even at this crucial juncture, some members on the opposite side just don't get it. We are well aware of their strategy, and rest assured we will not allow the people of this borough to be misled or taken for fools by the Tory administration. The Council now finds itself in a position that it will have to look over and beyond the spending controls which the Tory administration continue to disregard. Can Councillor Steve Clark confirm that he is the Cabinet member with responsibility for Council's finances, and does he agree with me that he and the Tory administration have failed the people of Dudley? And the question that looms over us is significant. What assurance can he provide that the Council will not find itself declaring bankruptcy post-May? Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Ali, Councillor Clark to reply. There are no more speakers. Oh, Councillor Patrick Harley to speak.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It's quite extraordinary. Councillor Raleigh has the same speech as last year, October, November. Exactly the same speech as at the previous audit committee, the same speech as at Cabinet, the same speech as at the Overview and Scrutiny Committee that was chaired by Councillor Kettle in this chamber a few months ago. The narrative from Councillor Ali just doesn't change. However, events have, and we've moved on. He claims it was December that we took action. Actually, it was October. It was the October Cabinet. Actually, Councillor Ali was in that room at that time. And those measures now, acknowledged by the external auditor, acknowledged by the independent improvement board, that we are a long way away from where we were in October. And that is not the fault of this administration. It's an issue that every council up and down the country, Labour or Conservative, are going through because the ever-increasing costs of social care, both children's and adults. Now, unlike some authorities, like Birmingham and Nottingham, we have listened, we've taken heed of the warnings from the external auditor, from the monitoring officer and the 151 officer, and we're putting in measures to avoid a 114. And I believe we are a long way away now from a 114. The measures we've taken from that three-year financial plan, in 2027 in October, we were predicting a deficit of £27 million. It is now reduced, Madam Mayor, to 12, and we'll have obviously a larger debate on that this time next week. So we've come a long way since October. We've got the contingency fund set up on each of the 4 measures the external auditor wants us to do. The first one is ongoing, but we've already reduced that deficit in year 3 from 27 to 12. The new total operating model will give us those additional savings. We also need those recurrent savings, and the new operating model, new total operating model, will give us those recurrent savings. And it's the recurrent savings which are important, because that 1 million this year becomes 2 next year, 3 the next year, and so on and so forth. And then finally, Madam Mayor, the 4th request from the external auditor, that's already complete, with £3.3 million already in that contingency fund, and that 3.3 will rise to almost 10 million over the next 3 years. So we are heeding the advice of the external auditor. We're heeding the advice of the independent advisory board, improvement board. And I believe, Madam Mayor, that we will not have a section 114 and that we will continue to improve the financial outlook of this authority, and over time we will do what the external auditor wants us to do, which is to start to rebuild those reserves, which is the correct way to do it. And our way of doing it, Madam Mayor, is one which will be sustainable. The last thing residents of this borough want is a recovery plan which closes every community centre, every borough hall, every leisure centre, and still can't balance the books. That won't happen on this side of the chamber. We'll have a recovery plan, we'll rebuild those reserves, and we'll do it in a sustainable fashion. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Harley. Councillor Kesey.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The leader quotes or states that the member of the opposition gives the same speech again and again and again. But you give the same excuse again and again and again. every single time. And the question I ask is, I believe Mr Newman was in the paper last week with his concerns that we're still in trouble. I've just heard the representative of Grant Thornton saying, you're still in trouble. But you in the newspaper article said, oh no, they're just being pessimistic, we'll be fine. I'm asking Councillor Clark, who do I believe? Do I believe Ian Newman, the representative of Grant Thornton, or do I believe Councillor Harley? Who's right? Because we're getting mixed messages. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kesey. Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Madam Mayor, could I ask either the Leader of the Council or the Lead Member for Finance, bearing in mind we have the Auditor with us this evening, if he agrees strictly with recommendation 2, which is to strictly enforce the existing spending controls already in place without exception. And also, Madam Mayor, could I ask the same to Cabinet members, the Leader and Lead Member for Finance, if they agree with the Section 151 officer in the comments that he has published in the budget papers, namely that a Section 114 notice is still likely to be issued within the next 12 months. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Martin. Councillor Lowe.
And on this contribution, I will be very brief because I think the Leader of the Council makes it a fair point in that the main debate on this budget will take place in this Council chamber next week. But just on a couple of accuracies and clarifications. And firstly, whilst we've got the auditors here, on positive news, I think it's fair to say, as the Leader of the Council has said, that some work has been undertaken since the Cabinet report back in October. To date, we have started to work both for 23-24, of which obviously from our side we believe greater pace should have been given, but then positive work as well commenced with regard to 24-25. However, the one point that I do wish to seek clarification, and this is one of my ongoing concerns, is the overtly optimistic situation that is displayed by the Leader of the Council, which then emanates through numbers of the councillors sitting opposite. Now, my understanding is that it's not as optimistic as you say, Councillor Harley, and I'll ask Steve Clark whether he agrees or not with me. In fact, not just with me. I'll ask Councillor Clark whether he agrees with me and a Section 151 officer. In fact, it's not just that. I'll ask Steve Clark whether he agrees with me, the Section 151 officer and the auditors. In fact, it's not just that. I'll ask Steve Clark whether he agrees with me, the 151 officer, the auditors and the independent board, in that the finances of this council are in a perilous situation. And I know that Councillor Harley agrees with that statement, but by standing up and saying that we are not in 114 territory, then gives a mandate for certain councillors sitting opposite to say that we haven't got a financial problem, that we can guarantee that certain funding that we know we will be debating next week isn't available, is available. And then that myth permeates into our communities. And it's a mistruth. It is simply not the case. And I believe, in line with the 151 officer, in line with whatever did the Russians do for us, that we need to be responsible in our responses. Our finances are in a perilous situation. And the budgetary discussion next week will be without amendment, which will take many of those things that certain councillors are going into their communities and say will still be available. It is untrue. Untrue. And we need to have that responsible response. Now, us on our side are very clear. I suggest you need to make abundantly clear on your side. Steve Clark, I'll be interested in your response, because you cannot have that middle way. Either the respondents that I refer to, you are correct with regard to the perilous situation of the 114, or the council leader is correct in that we have no risk of 114. Both cannot be true.
Thank you, Councillor Lowe. Okay, thank you. Where's Steve?
Steve's here. Can you sort that, Steve?
It'll have to be reported to IT for a later time. Councillor Steve Clark to reply, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And I will reply to all of you. What we've found over the last few months is big problems in the finances of this authority. Now, those big problems were due to the increased cost of adult social care and children's care. We've had a big problem when we were looking at a 114 for this budget. But what we've done, rather than Councillor Alley saying that we're looking the other way, that is completely wrong. We are not looking the other way. We are dealing with the issues that we've got. Now, what's happened is the 151 officer and all his staff and the team and the opposition have been working hard to make sure that we can get over this problem. We were facing a 114 for this budget. We are no longer facing a 114 for this budget. We have still got work to do in order to make sure that we don't have a 114 for next year. But as the auditor said, he welcomes positive movement. And that positive movement is the fact that the special measures that we have taken within the council have started to work. They're not finished, they have started to work. And next year is going to be a phenomenally difficult year for us all in making sure that we can make a legal budget for the following year. So we've got a lot of work to do. So we are facing it, but we are facing our problems. Right, now I'd like to just address some of the things, the recommendations that have been made. And with reference to the first recommendation, I assure you that every effort will be made to maximise the unallocated general fund reserve account. When we first came to power, it was £15 million in reserves. We've got that up to 26. Our journey starts again, where we need to make sure that we are up to those levels. With regard to the second recommendation, a review of the spending controls is underway, and also we are reviewing, as part of the organisational redesign programme and development of a new targeting operating model, which is being undertaken now. With regard to the third recommendation that you gave us, and as you're aware, we've identified a further £4.1 million worth of savings for 24-25, which is reducing the budget gap for that year to £6 million. And we're also undertaking sufficient work to advance the ongoing deficit through the delivery of improvement and sustainability plan. So that is happening. That is the work that both leaders are putting in to make sure that we get out of this situation, and the deputy leaders. So we are working together to make sure we resolve this situation. As for Councillor Alley, what a lot of nonsense saying we're burying our heads in the sand. Absolute garbage. And as for the last point that you made with reference to the contingency fund, what has happened now is that we've already put £3.3 million within that contingency fund to make sure that we can deal with any issues that come up next year, so we have that money available. So as for your fourth recommendation, we've actioned that. And that is it, Madam Mayor. That is the situation. That is the situation we find ourselves in. We are making progress. We are making progress as a group, as a council, and I believe that with a lot of hard work next year, I'm going to say we're positive people. I am working hard to make sure that we can be positive in this. I'm not going to talk Dudley down, but I want to make sure that we are positive in trying to get over this problem that we are all facing. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Are all agreed? That is carried. Moving on to the reports and recommendations, and starting with the capital programme monitoring, I call on the leader.
Madam Mayor, members of the Council, I move that the recommendations of the Cabinet be approved and adopted.
Is there a seconder?
Formally seconded, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Shaukat Ali.
Yeah, thank you. My question is in relation to Dudley Town Centre, item 20, page 36. Madam Mayor, while I welcome any investment in the town that will halt its decline and breathe new life into it, we have seen the heart of our town wither away, witnessing the closure of shops such as Woolworths, Farm Foods, Wilkinson's, smaller businesses, and emergence of abundance of barber shops, takeaways, pound and betting shops. In June last year, I expressed concern at the Tory administration's proposal for a £250,000 loan to alter the layout of the market stalls because it was not good use of taxpayers' money, particularly when almost £7 million had been spent in revamping the market with a new roof. Duncan Edwards' statue was repositioned, public space was enhanced, infrastructure was upgraded, and the number of stalls were reduced to create more space. Over the years, the Tory administration have neglected the town centre and let it get run down. Whilst the market needs support, it's not about changing the physical appearance. It's about understanding the deeper issues that hinder its success. The proposed £40,000 expenditure, though a reduced spend, does not address the root causes of the market's decline. It does not tackle the issue of antisocial behaviour which market traders face, sunken paving stones which are dangerous for people to walk on, the deep potholes at either end of the entrance to the market, the cleanliness of the marketplace, and the engagement with local people who use the market. Instead, we see another example of their incompetence and mismanagement. The voices of local people who use the town and market cannot be neglected. Their views will shape the market that not only meets their needs, but also becomes a hub of social interaction and economic activity. Can the leader tell us what steps have been taken to address the issues I have outlined, and does he now agree that his decision to take out the £250,000 loan was wrong in the first place? Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Ali. Councillor Adam Aston, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just a few words and a question with regards to paragraph 21 at the bottom of page 36. The grant funding secured to install changing places at Black Country Museum, Dudley Zoo, Cornbow Centre and Stourbridge Town Hall. This is incredibly welcome. Changing places facilities are large, accessible toilets suitable for people living with disabilities or complex needs. They usually contain a hoist, a shower and adult-sized changing bench. These facilities literally give people the freedom and confidence to access public places. They allow disabled people and their carers the dignity the rest of us take for granted. Madam Mayor, there are 1,400 changing places public toilets in the UK. Only a handful of those are here within the Dudley Borough. Ironically, one of those is located at the Unicorn Centre. I wonder if the Leader of the Council will commit to do all he can to further increase the number of changing places facilities in Dudley and ensure the authority continues to bid for any available grant funding so that our borough can continue to to become a more accessible and inclusive place to live, work and visit. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Aston. Are there any more questions? Councillor Zada.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just wanted to welcome on page 34 the additional funds for Woodside Day Centre. This is something that we've been talking about for some time, and it'd be good to obviously see this back up and running to its full function. Certainly, as we've spoken earlier about the facilities that's coming online for disabled people, this is another area that will support that cohort of people, and obviously those people that suffer from mental ill health. So long overdue, be really keen that this becomes operational as quick as possible, and it's something that lots of members across the whole borough really appreciate. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Zada. Councillor Patrick Harley to reply.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Where am I? First of all, thank you, Councillor Zada, for those comments. And Councillor Adam Aston, yes, of course, it would be nice to support any additional change in places, as long, of course, as they meet the spending controls. Thought I'd get that one in. Madam Mayor, reference Councillor Ali's contribution. He claims that, that there is no investment, that we don't do anything, that we just stand by idly and watch the town just wither away and die. Has he not walked around the town centre? It is an absolute nightmare at the moment due to that regeneration work actually happening. And on our watch, we went and secured the funding for the demolition of Cavendish. On our watch, we secured the remaining funding for the Very Light Rail Test Track and Innovation Centre. Under our watch, we went and got the funding, the full funding for the new Dudley interchange, which is now being built as we speak. It's causing chaos around the town centre. We're trying to dodge buses here, there and everywhere. But what a facility we will have once it's complete. We've also gone and secured private investment, Madam Mayor, for an entertainment hub in Stone Street Square, with a planning application imminent now for the old museum that site closed, and we found a really good, solid use for. And also on top of that, Madam Mayor, we've got the full funding for the metro extension from Wednesbury to Brierley Hill. Not to Dudley, not to the waterfront, not to the Merry Hill Centre, to Brierley Hill. We've got the full funding. Now, that is regeneration at its best, where you have a council administration working hand in hand with the West Midlands Mayor, West Midlands Combined Authority, and having the ear of those in government that provide the external funding. But, Madam Mayor, even with the spending controls we have, even with the council in the position that it is, where we have to watch every penny, our ambitious regeneration programme, one of the most ambitious regeneration programmes any authority has had in recent years, hasn't stalled, it hasn't stopped, it's continuing. And I really sincerely hope, Madam Mayor, that hopefully in the next month we can announce that we've actually got the ice ring over the line. Because the work that the West Midlands Growth Company are doing to see whether it is feasible, those reports are coming back very favourable. And Councillor Ali can smirk and scoff all he likes, but this is about bringing in a facility to this town centre that will breathe so much new life into it. More footfall, more people spending their hard-earned cash, putting Dudley on the map. A first-class facility that the party opposite scoffed at, but through our hard work and the work of the officer team and the West Midlands Growth Company and Andy Street, will be delivering regeneration at a pace that the party opposite can only dream about. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Harley. Are all agreed? That is carried. Now, the annual review of the Constitution, I call on the leader. Is there a seconder? No questions? My fault, sorry. So, going backwards, suspension of the Council Plan 2022 to 2025, I call on the leader.
Of the Cabinet be approved and adopted. Thank you.
Is there a seconder?
Formally seconded, Madam Mayor.
Right to reply? All agreed? That's carried. And moving back to the annual review of the Constitution, I call on the leader.
I move that the recommendations of the Cabinet be approved and adopted.
And is there a seconder?
Mayor.
No questions? Councillor Harley, you're right to reply. Is all agreed? That is carried. Review of housing finance. I call on Councillor Laura Taylor-Childs.
Members of the Council, I move that the recommendations of the report be approved and adopted.
Is there a seconder?
Seconded, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Cowell.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The HRI budget presented here is indicative of chaos. Charges for this, that and the other, but we can't tell you exactly what for or exactly how much because we haven't worked it out yet. We just need to top up the reserves as fast as possible so that we can cover the circa £187 million cost of all the issues that we think Savills are going to find. This is the Tory position, and it is not good enough. When I tried raising a question around the £187 million in December's Cabinet, I was quickly shut down. The leader commented in the same meeting that service charges will provide for improved services and allow tenants to have pride in where they live. This demonstrates how out of touch the Tory administration is. Patrick Hawley and his Tory friends might be able to shoulder such charges, but they are not the ones paying. After years of being left with overgrown and untidy communal space and dirty landings, I think we will find that tenants are more interested in putting food on the table and shoes on their children's feet than Tory gimmicks. To make matters worse, there is no evidence provided that service will improve where they already exist or to show how services will be extended. Rent increases, including service charges, are nearly 21% weekly on average. This whilst wages are rising by around 7.7% and benefits by around 6.7%. The response is that there is going to be some interim assistance for those who can't pay, though we haven't written the policy yet. Madam Mayor, what about those on legacy benefits who make the mistake of contacting DWP to see if they can help? That will generate a change in circumstances and a transfer to universal credit, with loss of the transitional protection that comes with forced migration. Some of our tenants could end up with housing costs covered but lose out overall due to the switch to universal credit. Once they make that request, there is no going back. There seems to be an incorrect assumption that all those on benefits will migrate shortly and automatically. But in fact, letters going out to our residents currently indicate dates into 2028. The situation will be exacerbated by the addition of charges for home call, which have recently been implemented and are due to rise in April. What happens when people can't pay, can't get help? The council is the housing provider of last resort. So where do people go next? I accept that reserves are low, considered alongside comparable authorities. But how have we got here? Failure to respond to reports of repairs in a timely manner. Failure to ensure contractors turn up when they should. Failure to check workmanship. Failure to use high-quality materials. Failure to keep proper records. Buying stock that we aren't able to maintain. These issues have contributed to the mess, but they are not the responsibility of the tenants, but of this Tory council. Many of the solutions cost nothing. Listening to our tenants, treating them with respect and acting when we need to. At a time of financial crisis of the Tory leadership's own making, it is time for some humble pie. Finally, Madam Mayor, let's be very clear that the responsibility for this mess rests with the Tory administration. Unfortunately, it is our tenants that will pay to fix it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cowell. Councillor Reid.
I'm speaking on behalf of my colleague and all the residents, council tenants of Dudley, and I will keep doing the same speech over and over again. Residents who have the least resources are being asked to shoulder the greatest financial burden. Rent rises, council tax, green waste, and basically...
Councillor Reid, sorry, can I ask you to stand? It's just constitution.
Okay,
thank you.
As again, you will hear my speech again and again. Residents who have the least resources are being asked to shoulder the greatest financial burden. Rent rises, council tax, green waste. We have residents in high-rise flats who are being asked to pay more but getting less. The removal of the aerial fund, where our concern is come April, when these have been implementing, what the crisis is going to be for that 30% that you keep saying that will get the help. The 70% that you say are on benefits will get the help from the benefits. But what about the 30% people who are trying to make a living, who work full-time, who have families, who have other bills and cost of living crises? How are they going to find this money to survive?
Councillor Martin.
Quickly, Madam Mayor, but thank you. I'd have thought more members would want to come in on this, bearing in mind the report in front of us. My question really is obviously to the Cabinet Member for Housing. This report includes some significant rises to our tenants, some of our most vulnerable people in the borough. Last year's budget for housing revenue in terms of total income was 98 million, and that included repairs, programmed and responsive, to the total of 26.3 million from an income of 98. The report in front of us shows that after the increase in rent of 7.7% and the service charges, total income for the year ahead is 109 million. And yet repairs, both responsive and programmed, only goes up by a few £100,000 to 27.1 million. Now, I'd have expected, if income from our tenants, if we're asking them to pay £11 million more, then far more money would be spent on planned and responsive repairs. It seems to me that our tenants are being asked to pay an exorbitant increase but receiving very little for it. I'll just repeat those figures again. This year, £26.3 million worth of repairs on a budget of 98 million, going up to £27.1 million worth of repairs on a budget of 109 million. Could I ask the Cabinet Member, is now the right time to be pushing through this level of increase, and what benefit will our tenants see? Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Martin. Councillor Laura Taylor-Charles to reply.
Madam Mayor. I'm going to take these questions in reverse. Councillor Martin, thank you for your contributions. I think you're confusing our revenue budget with our capital budget. The figures that you quoted there were from our revenue income, and they're responsive repairs, so in their very nature depend on what comes up that year. Our capital budget will determine what planned works we do and what long-term investment we're going to put into our properties. Councillor Reid, you're right that our residents are some of our most vulnerable tenants. Our rates are still considerably low comparatively across privately rented sector and across other authorities. We do have a responsibility to make sure that our tenants can afford as much as possible, but we also have a responsibility to provide a well-maintained housing stock. So the alternative to not putting up rents right now is to consider what parts of our housing service and what parts of our responsive repairs or our planned work cycles do we not do in the next few years. Those are the two decisions and the two discussions we can have. Concerns around affordability that have been raised by my colleague across the room are absolutely valid, and we've had this conversation at multiple points over the last few months when considering this budget. It's something that I've been concerned about, but we've been able to mitigate a lot of those issues by making sure that we comply with service charges that can be placed in line with housing benefits, discretionary housing payments and universal credits, information that my opposite member has received multiple times. With regards to the rest, it's all unsubstantiated waffle. If you want to talk about failures, Councillor Cowell, then we'll talk about why we are in a position where we have had to do a 100% stock condition survey. We can have the conversation around why we have ended up in such a position where our data was so out of date, where we have discovered discrepancies and errors for over 10 years. The majority of that time and the start of that time was under the opposition's administration. We uncovered this issue and we have fixed this issue. So if you want to discuss failures, we can do so in an open forum. That's not a problem. You also you mentioned that our tenants' priorities would be to pay bills and put food on their table, and that's absolutely right. But we also have a responsibility to keep a roof over their heads, and I think you'd agree that that would also be quite high up on their priority list. We're in a position now where we are awaiting the outcome of that stock condition survey. And you talk about, oh, you've asked the question, and we're not giving you any information on what that's going to look like. And we don't know where we're going to spend our money next year. That's not chaos, Councillor Cowell. That is absolutely a well-informed capital programme. That is us taking account of what stock we've got, what our needs are for our borough, and making sure that all the money that we spend, to make sure that we're spending tenants' money wisely after we have asked them to pay more, making sure that that is done in the best way possible, to make sure we can account for as much of that money as possible, and we should be held accountable by our tenants for making sure that that programme isn't airy-fairy and based on inaccurate data that we inherited when we took over the administration, but to make sure that it is informed by statistics and data from across our entire stock. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Are all agreed? That is carried. Dudley Council Pay Policy. I call on Councillor Steve Clark.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Members of the Council, I move that the recommendations of the Cabinet be approved and adopted.
Is there a seconder?
Formally seconded, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Clark to reply. That is carried. Oh, that is carried. Treasury Management. I call on Councillor Angus Lee.
Madam Mayor, members of the Council, I move that the recommendations of the Audit and Standards Committee be approved and adopted.
Is there a seconder?
Yes, seconded, Madam Mayor.
I call on Councillor Angus Lee to reply. All agreed? That is carried. Appointment of the Director of Environment. I call on the Leader.
I move that the recommendation of the Appointments Committee be approved and adopted.
Is there a seconder?
Yes, seconded, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Patrick Harley to reply. All agreed? That is carried. The Dudley Electoral Changes Order 2024. I call on the leader.
Madam Mayor, members of the Council, I can confirm that the order was made by Parliament on the 16th of February 2024, and I move that the report be received and noted.
Is there a seconder? Councillor Simon Phipps.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. It's just a very quick comment from me. I'm sure that a lot of members in this chamber will agree that when you hear the word boundary changes, you get a little bit concerned because you never know what's going to happen. But throughout the process, I think members have been very adequately supported by members of the Electoral Services team who have been very accommodating to explaining how this works, and also making sure that elected members from both political parties that were represented at the time had the tools to be able to effectively respond to that consultation. So it's a very quick thank you from me to the Electoral Services team and the Commissioners for conducting what was a very, very quick and I think efficient boundary review process. I endorse the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Phipps. Councillor Patrick Harley to reply.
Mayor, thank you, Councillor Phipps, for that contribution. Simon's absolutely right. Compared to some local authorities where this has been carried out, some quite close to us, I think this has been relatively trouble-free. It's been a relatively easy ride for the leaders of the groups and for members like Councillor Foster and Councillor Phipps, who were very much involved in this process. So again, I'll extend the thanks that Simon's give to our electoral team, and absolutely fantastic result and relatively trouble-free. And we look forward to those elections in May, where I'm sure we'll retain control of this authority. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Harley. Other council agreed? That is carried. Review of polling districts, polling places and polling stations. I once again call on the leader.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Madam Mayor, members of the Council, I move that the recommendations in the report be approved and adopted.
And is there a seconder?
Seconded, Madam Mayor.
You're right to reply, Councillor Harley. Are all agreed? So that is carried. Appointment of Returning Officer, Electoral Registration Officer and Deputy Electoral Registration Officer. I call on the leader.
Recommendation 2 in the report is withdrawn. So I move that the recommendation in paragraph 3 of the report be approved and adopted. And the reason for that is obviously we have the return of the Chief Exec, so we obviously welcome him back, full health. But today Kevin has signed an authority and delegation, which means that should Kevin not be present here for whatever reason, then his deputy, Balvinder, will assume those statutory powers anyway. So it really does negate the need to have recommendation 2. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Is there a seconder?
Yes, seconded, Madam Mayor.
Right to reply, Councillor Harley. All agreed? That is carried. Composition and membership of committees. I call on the leader.
Members of the Council, I move that the recommendations in the report be approved and adopted.
Is there a seconder?
Yes, seconded, Madam Mayor.
Better than a workout.
Do you wish to reply, Councillor Harley? Please stand when you're addressing me. All agreed? That is carried. Moving on to the notices of motion. Can That was 2 of you. It's because you were up and down. Can I remind members that under Council Procedure Rule 12.5, the maximum time allowed to deal with notices of motion is 30 minutes. If the notice of motion is not dealt with within this period, it will be referred to the next ordinary meeting of the Council. Tackling antisocial use of off-road vehicles. I call on Councillor Ryan Priest to move the motion in his name as set out on the agenda.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The antisocial use of off-road vehicles is a huge issue in our borough. It's a particular issue in Woolscope Park in my ward, which is our borough's largest and I'd argue one of our best parks. Selfish yobs are tearing up our precious green spaces, and there's been a failure of both this authority and the West Midlands Police and Crime Commissioner to tackle this issue appropriately. My motion will push the Council into further action across the borough with more signage and an improved reporting system, and specifically in Woolscope Park, it will instruct the authority to install fencing and other measures to make it more difficult for off-road bikes to access the park. But there's only so much that this authority can do, and it is right that we call out the failures of the Labour Police and Crime Commissioner too. I would suggest that if he'd spent more time doing his job, he'd spend less time trying to save it. There is a complete lack of interest from his office in tackling this issue. It's ignored emails from councillors, ignored calls from residents, and my motion rightly demands better. This is an issue that is spiralling out of control, and we must take action to stamp it out. Thank you, and I move this motion.
Thank you, Councillor Priest. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Tim Crumpton.
Madam Mayor, I wish to move an amendment to the motion. I believe that the officers have the amendment available for the Council to read, and I wondered whether members could be given time to have a look at the motion before I start the actual amendment. Otherwise, I'm quite happy to carry on with the amendment.
As the notices of motion only take 30 minutes, if you'd like to carry on, I think that would be all right.
Right. Hopefully people can read the motion as it goes round. Sadly, it's 2 pages long. Right. So, Madam Mayor, many councillors throughout the Dudley Borough will know of constituents' despair that a few youths are making their daily lives a misery. Riding bikes with no helmets, dressed like burglars at all times of the day, uninsured, untaxed and unwelcome, they do so with absolutely no regard for the safety of pedestrian road users and themselves. Rarely, even at night, do they use lights. They think nothing of weaving in and out of traffic, mounting pavements, and in doing so, frightening young and old in our communities. We all have parks, or most of us, within our wards, and open green spaces, which they treat like scrambler tracks, ripping up the grass, causing locals to see what should be peaceful and pleasant spaces as areas they need to avoid. The police seem powerless to stop this. They can't chase the bikes safely, and even with the recent introduction of off-road teams, have had little success in catching these young criminals, because that is what they are. When asked why, the police, when they know who these people are, they're named by local people, to the police and to anybody that will listen. When action isn't being taken, one answer in a local community forum was that they have to see the biker go into their house before they can do anything about it. Actually, I wrote to the Chief Superintendent over the weekend, and I actually have had a call today from our neighbourhood police to advise that, and this is why we've not got this, you look at the cuts that have taken place within the police force. Do you know how many coppers are on duty in Halesowing tonight? In the neighbourhood? There were two. Two of them are here downstairs looking after that. 2 people to cover the whole Alto area of our borough. Oops, doing it again, sorry. It's just not enough, is it? A few years ago, we had 4 PCSOs in our ward. We've got none now that actually attribute to it. So, how do we stop this? If you look through the the amendment, what we're saying is that we have to proactively attack these things. We have to make sure that all of the resources of the council can be used to tackle these problems. We have to make sure that we liaise properly with the police over them. We have to make sure that our communities are made aware of what we can do rather than sitting back and doing not a lot. The final thing I say is this, that in the original motion that was before you, we talk about a trip fence going around Woollerscope Park. Now, I've talked to a lot of locals. I set up the Friends of the Park 20-odd years ago. Do you know how big that park is? It's over a mile, just the 2 perimeters. And then you've got the bit down to the line as well. To put that in after we've just talked in this council chamber about spending and the possibility that we can't spend it, the fact that we'd have to spend thousands of pounds on a trip fence, right, that, as the motion says, still to allow push chairs and other things through it, these bikers wouldn't give a damn about it. You can go through the open gate. You can go over the bridge down the bottom of Lye Park. It wouldn't make an ape of the difference. So to my mind, what we need is what's in this motion. I'm sorry you didn't have the chance to read it beforehand. I did try to get it out there. But it's a sensible approach. The Police and Crime Commissioner does not take part in operational duties. That's what you've got to remember. Blame him all you want. Blame the Mayor if he takes on the duties next year, but the police need to have the resources paid for by central government for us to actually do anything about this. Thank you. Please support the amendment.
Is there a seconder?
Yeah, formally seconded, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Are there any... Councillor Adam Aston.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I rise to speak in support of the amendment presented by Councillor Crumpton. The antisocial use of off-road bikes destroys the peace and tranquillity of our green open spaces right across the Dudley Borough and beyond. In my own ward, several areas of green space suffer from this scourge. I'm a member of West Midlands Policing and Crime Panel, and the issue is regularly raised by councillors from each and every local authority represented there. The common thread, the brutal reduction in police funding over the past 14 years, which has crippled the ability of West Midlands Police to respond robustly to emerging issues such as this. And, as outlined in the amendment, it has decreased local intelligence gained through community policing. Despite those cuts, I believe it was the current Police and Crime Commissioner who established a dedicated off-road bike unit. I support the call for underage test purchases of petrol, perhaps conducted by our trading standards team, with particular reference to its potential use in off-road bikes. I would also advocate for a cross-boundary approach to this issue, coordinated by the Office of the Police and Crime Commissioner. Fully support the amendment, Madam Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Aston. Are there any more comments or questions regarding the amendment? Councillor Kesey.
Just very quickly, Madam Mayor, on the point of having a tool for us to inform the council as to any issues, we've already got that. It's called Councillor Contact. Councillor Phipps introduced a very quick and easy form for us to fill in. My problem is that whenever I report it, and I've got a very similar issue in Downfield Drive, currently up at Gornland Wood Setton, but soon to be Sedgley, welcome Downfield Drive, where a stile has either fallen apart or disappeared, and said off-road bikers are now onto, I think it's called Arkle Park, leaving big ruts in the grass, etc. I have put that straight to Councillor Contact. Apologies to Councillor Aston and Councillor Westwood preempting that little Sedgley move. And I've had the response saying, thanks for your issue, it's been passed on. From then, nothing. Absolutely nothing at all. And it's the same with many other issues, not necessarily to do with off-road bikes. We report it, and then it just disappears into the ether. So what I would say is we have already got the mechanism. I am going to support the amendment, because if you're going to put a fence around Stevens Park, then you're going to put a fence around the 10 score in Sedgley as well, and every other park and grassed area that we've got in Dudley, which just is not feasible. So I will support the amendment, but I would say if we are going to put a system in to specifically report these issues, there's got to be some action that comes from it. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Kesey. Councillor Denning.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Castle and Priory, Castle Mill Woods, over the last 18 months, 7 bikes taken off their owners, either illegally owned or bought for peppercorn money. The police, council officers, the councillors of Castle and Priory and the residents, for the last 20 years, there's been a scourge of off-road bikes. Different councillors, different police have tried to actually stop the problem. 18 months ago, Councillor Kieran Casey actually pledged to actually make a difference. He did, because he got everybody talking. He got the officers to actually put in proper fencing, not trip rails. Trip rails won't work with scramblers and some of the off-road bikes. They'll just actually use them as another form of entertainment. Completely agree that they are a scourge. It's very antisocial. The noise from them and the damage is absolutely damning. But equally, a trip rail round any of our public spaces will do the same to disabled people. It will stop disabled people going into those parks. It's hard enough for disabled people to actually access. Castlemill Woods had quite a lot of money spent on cinder paths to actually try and make it a lot more accessible, not only for disabled people, but for families, pushchairs. These off-road bikes are actually tearing them up. The police using off-road bikes and drones are actually tried to actually do something about it. They've stopped 7 bikes so far, taken them away from the people riding them, fined them, and actually brought, I think it's 4 to court. So to actually say that the police crime commissioner that actually made the off-road bikes back into public service and put 4 of them on so far with the Proceeds of Crime Act money, along with the drones, I think it's completely unacceptable to say that the Police and Crime Commissioner hasn't done anything. He has started, but with all walks of life at the moment, funds are actually quite tight, and at some point the Chief Constable has decided to put police officers on the beat rather than put off-road bikes. Hopefully that's going to change, and West Midlands Police are actually going to institute more of these off-road bikes. What I would say for the council and the leader of the council is to actually try and make sure that the bikes, the off-road bikes, are actually based in the new Dudley police station, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Denning. Is there anybody else that wishes to speak on the amendment before I put this to... No? Okay, so before I put the amendment to the vote, does the mover of the original motion wish to speak? No? So can we now have a vote on the amendment? Due to technical issues, we're going to go with a show of hands. I said a show of hands, not clapping hands. So, yeah, just hands would be preferable. 64 there. How many's here? We did have, we no longer. So no. So all of those in favour of the amendment from Councillor Tim Crumpton can have a show of hands, please. So the amendment... all those against, sorry.
Yeah, comfortably more than that, the amendment is lost.
The amendment is lost.
So, anybody else wants to speak?
Does anybody else want to speak on the original motion? Councillor Laura Taylor-Charles, please.
We would like to propose a further amendment, and Democratic Services have got the printouts of that now. Whilst they're handing it round, I'll do the same as Councillor Crumpton. I'd like to thank Councillor Priest for bringing forward the motion. I'm hearing many members around this chamber recognising the impact of this particular form of antisocial behaviour and the impact that it has on our communities. The purpose of bringing this amendment is in no way to change the nature of Councillor Priest's original motion, but to ensure that it can obtain full endorsement of the chamber and ensure that its intentions are focused on the right people and organisations. Whilst I acknowledge that in principle Councillor Crumpton's amendment condemns the actions of anyone engaging in this behaviour and is entirely intended to be constructive, we can't diminish the roles and responsibilities of the PCC in this issue. To say that the PCC doesn't take part in operational pursuits is simply making excuses for lack of action. And we need to make sure that we do hold everyone to account, including ourselves. I'd like to
we gave the last amendment speaker the chance to speak without speaking over. Could we please do the same?
I'd like to recognise the work that has been done locally through the Community Safety Partnership, which includes our local policing unit. Other members in the chamber, I'm sure, will provide greater details of their efforts locally. But I'd like to make reference to the work that Councillor Davis has done in his area. He's worked with our team and produced a campaign around reporting of incidents, not just of the antisocial behaviour itself, but of intelligence which can help the police identify and engage with the perpetrators. I also recognise Councillor Kesey's comments regarding the reports disappearing into the ether. I can assure you stats are passed on via the Community Safety Partnership, but agree we definitely need more police reporting back on how they use the information that we give them, and it should absolutely form part of the response of this motion. The reporting will form a massive part of our efforts as we move forward. We need to make sure that we have accurate statistics across the borough so we can make sure that any response from the Police and Crime Commissioner is led by statistics, and also the use of our own resources such as deployable CCTVs. I have established a single point of contact within our community safety partnerships which will be circulated to all members and should be used in line with the councillor contact as well. However, above the need for the better reporting facility, it is really prudent to note that the Police Crime Commissioner does have a huge part to play in tackling crime in our area. And so far we have seen a lack of support for our local teams to deal with these issues. Yet again, we are seeing an avoidance of commitment to provide resource to our local policing force. And the PCC did in fact purchase the new bikes which would essentially level the playing field in pursuit of these perpetrators. However, this came with advice to police officers not to pursue in the majority of situations, so render them almost entirely useless. We also recognise that there's cross-organisation work to be done into the demographics of these perpetrators to understand whether there is need for additional services to prevent these activities, such as potentially increased youth provision. We have had contact from the Police Crime Commissioner's office in relation to this. However, so far it seems that it's another method of pushing financial burdens onto the local authority and avoiding his own responsibility for this issue. Madam Mayor, members of the Chamber, I move the amendment to the Council.
Is there a seconder? Thank you. Councillor Collins.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to offer my support for the proposed amendment to the notice of motion. As an elected member who deals with frequent instances of off-road bikes in her ward, namely the Fensible Nature Reserves and local green spaces, but also Woodfield Avenue, where off-road bikes tearing through the connecting alleyway at unsociable hours is the bane of my residents' lives, I'm encouraged to see that there will be a commitment to bring together stakeholders, including the residents themselves who suffer daily with this antisocial behaviour, round the table in order to develop an appropriate strategy to address this issue. Regrettably, I'm not surprised that the neighbourhood police are not fully able to address this issue, given that the current PCC has managed to not only double the crime rates during his time in office, but has also managed to place West Midlands Police Force into special measures. I'm further encouraged to see the mention of the Canal and River Trust, as this stakeholder works tirelessly to upkeep our historic waterways so that they may be enjoyed by generations to come, something that may not stay possible without intervention to reduce the risk of harm to them from off-road bikes. It is at this point I wish to offer my congratulations to Councillor Davies and Lissell and Brierley Hill Ward for their campaign around working to get residents to report this nuisance behaviour to the police and to build the intelligence needed by the police to support measures from our council in the shape of deployable CCTV to discourage and form further plans to address this issue. The proposal amendment is thorough and gives commitment to enable members to fully engage and consult our communities. I fully offer my support for this amendment.
Thank you, Councillor Collins. Councillor Davies.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We also have this issue in my ward in Brierley Hill and Worsley South. It's a ward with lots of canals, and as Councillor Collins has said, the Canal and River Trust therefore need to be part of the conversation that will lead to a solution for this issue. So that's one of the big benefits of this amendment, I believe, that we can work together with all partners, the police, obviously the council, ward members, residents and the Canal and River Trust. I mean, people use the word nuisance when it comes to off-road bikes, but I think that doesn't quite cut it. There are three big issues that residents regularly raise with me when it comes to off-road bikes. That's the damage to our green spaces and our parks. It's the intimidation for dog walkers and the elderly. And it's also the risk to our children when they're out playing on the green spaces or with their families trying to enjoy the local canals. There's been mention of the off-road bike team that the PCC has recruited on a regional level. There is only one of these teams. It's a very small team, and I actually think it's in danger of setting the wrong expectation, because when I've inquired about this, similar to what other councillors have said tonight, we're told that that team does not actually pursue off-road bikers. It's not going to be an Indiana Jones style situation where they leap off the bike and get the offender and drag them to the floor. So really and truly, we need to get this issue at source. People know where these offenders live. They see a side gate open and the bike go rolling out the side and go shooting off. So we need to get that information. And I believe this amendment, these easier methods for people reporting to the council and to the police, the leaflet that we have worked with the antisocial behaviour team and the police to get produced. Hundreds of these have just gone through doors in my ward, particularly on the Horbush and the Swan estates. And we need to clamp down on this issue. The part that the council can do is helping facilitate the information coming in, but now we need the police and the Police and Crime Commissioner to actually do something with that data, to action it, to make arrests, to seize bikes and to crush them. And I think that's why this amendment gives that well-rounded approach that can help us tackle this issue. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Davies. Councillor Phipps.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor, and thank you very much to Councillor Taylor-Charles for putting the amendment forward, which I wholeheartedly support, and Councillor Priest for putting the motion in the first place. I want to associate my agreement with Councillor Taylor-Charles with regard to the role of Police and Crime Commissioner in this instance. Now, we've heard from some members that the PCC doesn't have operational input, but then we've heard from other members that it was the PCC that was instrumental in getting this off-road bike team. So only one of those things really can be true. Do they have input or do they not? Well, the PCC seems to think that he has some input because he's been tweeting over the last few days about all of the apparent benefits that he's been given towards operational matters at West Midlands Police. But what he hasn't mentioned is the fact that West Midlands Police are in special measures, the fact that the Police and Crime Commissioner role is proposed to be merged with the Mayor because of his failures in delivering the job that the people of the West Midlands expect him to do. He doesn't mention all of the money that has been wasted by him and his predecessor on back office costs at Lloyd House, rather than putting that into frontline policing in our communities across the borough. He's not mentioned any of that, but he is saying that he's having some positive input on operational policing, so only one can be right. And with that, Madam Mayor, I just wanted to ensure that we were aware of really what the facts to do with the Police and Crime Commissioner's role is. I'd like to move that we put the amendment to the vote so we can actually swiftly, hopefully, pass the amendment and then endorse the overall motion. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Is that seconded? So we'll now have a vote on the closure motion.
To know that there's been a balanced debate. So far I can see that only speakers for this amendment have been called and believe that that is not a balanced debate and that you should reconsider your decision. It is your decision to move to the vote or not.
There was a lot of speak on the amendment that you put earlier. So there have been quite a lot of speak on, I think everybody is quite vocal on this subject anyway. Please don't shake your microphone at me. I think we've heard enough on it. Well, I think we have. Do you want to carry this on? Well, I think you should leave the chamber then. I will suspend the meeting unless she leaves the chamber. Do you wish for me to suspend the meeting? Because I will, unless you leave the chamber. You've had no respect. It is my decision. I have made the decision. You respect the decision, or you leave the chamber.
That there are procedures to go through about the member not being heard before they're asked to leave the chamber. Could we ask the monitoring officer or the chief executive to just check the constitution to advise us before we embark on a procedure that we may regret? Thank you, Madam.
Madam Mayor, the position is covered under 20.4 of the Council Procedure Rules, which reads, if a member continues to behave improperly after a motion is carried, the Chair may move that either the member leaves the meeting or the meeting is adjourned for a specific period. The proceeding before that is a member not be heard further. However, Madam Mayor, it is your decision. Your decision is final this evening.
I think an apology would be acceptable.
There we go.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor, on the further point of order, I think we've now exceeded the 30 minutes.
We have about a minute left, I think, Councillor Lunn. No, it won't. But it is now exceeded.
It has now finished.
Right. Questions?
Questions from members under Council Procedure Rule 11. As agreed under Agenda Item 6C, the trial of the revised format for the question time session will be continued at this meeting. This will involve a 30-minute time limit on the session, the first 3 questions to be offered to the main opposition group leader, Other members will then be invited to ask questions, taking account on any advance written questions and the list of members who indicate to speak. If the 30-minute time limit is reached, any further questions can be submitted in writing, the usual process for 2 minutes per question, and any supplementary question will apply. I now call on the leader to move the formal suspension of council procedure rules.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Madam Mayor, members of the Council, I move that under Council Procedure 22.1, the provisions of Council Procedure Rule 11 be suspended for this meeting to enable the revised question time session to take place as outlined by Madam Mayor. Thank you.
Is that seconded?
Yes, formally seconded, Madam Mayor.
And does the council agree?
Aye.
Therefore, that is carried. Can I remind the council that the purpose of this session is for members to ask questions. When I call on members to ask a supplementary question, this must relate to the original question or the answer given. Councillor Peatlow.
Suspension leader in the carrying on the format of last time. In line with that, it's our intention tonight at the moment to ask 2 questions. The first question will come from Councillor Judy Foster, then the second question from myself.
Councillor Lowe. Madam Mayor, my question is regarding community forum funding, and I'd like to direct my question to Councillor Ian Bevan, if I may. So this is really a question seeking clarification. The issue of removing the community forum grant to be spent at by councils at individual forums has been widely covered in the press. But there is some confusion. So, for example, on the 21st of February at the Stourbridge Community Forum, Councillor Kettle mentioned that there was a guarantee that although the funding wasn't available at the moment, it would be returning after the budget, whatever that meant. And then Councillor Borley supported that position and said it would actually be returning in June. And then before that, on the 7th of February at the North Dudley Area Committee, the Community Forum, Councillor Caulfield made a statement on the basis that although the funding was frozen now, it was still there. It was still there, present. It still existed. So there is some confusion, Councillor Ian Bevan, regarding the position with Community Forum funding. I'd be very appreciative if you could clarify the position for us.
He'll say everybody's right.
I call on Councillor Ian Bevan to reply.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, Councillor Foster, there is some confusion. It would appear some of my colleagues have been a little enthusiastic, but I would like to clarify the position for you this evening. Subject to formal council decision on the 4th of March, the annual new allocation of £240,000, which, as you know, is equivalent to £10,000 per ward, will cease from the 1st of April 2024. This is part of the wider council budget savings proposed to support a return to financial sustainability. The outstanding balance of community forum funding from previous years' allocations is also £240,000. The fact that this is equal to 1 year of funding is a coincidence. The outstanding balance is sitting in an earmarked reserve that has not been returned to the general fund. The Finance Director has proposed that this balance be left there pending a return to financial sustainability and the removal of spending controls. Under current spending controls, community forum grants do not meet the criterion of essential spend. Therefore, the outstanding balance cannot be accessed and no new applications can be accepted at this time. The Council's community development workers will continue to work with local groups to explore alternative options and other sources of funding to deliver their projects. I'd also remind you that my colleague earlier announced that there will be a review of spending controls, and this may well be part of that. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Bevan. Councillor Foster, do you have a supplementary question?
I do, Madam Mayor, thank you. So I'm just wondering then where Councillor Borley got June from. Can you explain where the month of June, that's very specific in terms of a return of the forum funding. So can you explain where that's actually come from?
Councillor Bevan to reply.
That the community forum funding is returned as quickly as possible.
I call on Councillor Peatlow.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. I can confirm that Councillor Borley is enthusiastic as well, Councillor Atkins, albeit not already always totally accurate. My question is to Councillor Angus Lees, Madam Mayor, in his role as Chair of Audit and Standards Committee. And just want to ask Angus, just so that we can place it on the record, that at the meeting that was held on February 19th, 2024, in response to ongoing questions raised by members of that committee regarding communication between yourself, Councillor Clark and Councillor Harley, you stated that whilst you'd sent that communication, that no response had been received. Could you please confirm for the record that that communication was sent? Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Lowe. Councillor Lees to reply.
Thank you, Councillor Lowe. I can confirm it was sent. It was copied to my Vice Chair and it was sent on my behalf and the Vice Chair's behalf as decided by the committee. Maybe we could ask the leader, the deputy leader and the cabinet member for finance and legal to confirm that they received it. I did receive a response from the cabinet member for finance and legal which stated noted. So my email, which was highlighting our concern as raised by our external auditors about the reserves back in July. So from my perspective, it was our job as a committee to work in a non-political aspect, not politicise things, but create a awareness that we were very concerned, as were the auditors, the external auditors, as to the position on the diminishing reserves. So does that clarify it for you?
Councillor Lowe, do you have a supplementary question?
Yeah, just by way of a brief supplementary to that. No, thank you very much. I think that does clarify that. So, just to be absolutely clear, then the members of the Audit and Standards Committee can expect a copy of that email in the very near future. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Lowe. Councillor Lees to respond.
I've looked for the email on my email system. I have asked Councillor Borley to see if he can retrieve it, and we can't. I haven't deleted it. Maybe the leader, the deputy leader and the cabinet member for finance and legal might be able to find it. However, I've asked our deputy chief executive to contact the head of ICT because it may be, and she has suggested this, it may be that it was archived automatically and therefore it was out of my control if it's disappeared from the email system because the ICT system archives emails beyond a certain period of time, and we are going back 8 months now. Then I've spoken to the Deputy Chief Executive this evening before the council meeting started, and she has confirmed that she's on the case. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Lowe.
Question, and this is to the leader of the council. At the Audit and Standards Committee meeting held on February the 19th, the chair of that committee stated that he had sent a copy to both the leader and the head of finance back in July 2023. Could you confirm receipt of that letter, and could you maybe outline to the council some of the contents of your response? Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Lowe. Councillor Hoy to respond.
But I'll check through my emails, and if it's there, I'm happy to send Councillor Lowe a copy of my response.
Thank you, Councillor Harley. Councillor Lowe, supplementary question.
Yeah, thank you very much, Leader. If that's the case, that would be Boston. What I would hate is for the email to disappear, because then obviously there'd be questions about whether the email was actually sent in the first place. So thank you very much for clearing that up. Look forward to receiving it in the very near future.
I now invite Councillor Ryan Priest to ask the question of which he was given advance written notice.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. My question is if we can have an update on the resurfacing of the car park at the bottom of Toys Lane in Cradley. I'm not sure which Cabinet member is the most appropriate, so whoever's best.
I call on Councillor Damien Caulfield to reply.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Priest, for your question. Car parking is very important to this council and our residents and local businesses. That's why we're carrying out a borough-wide strategic review of parking, which is including on-street and off-street EV charging options. And the Toys Lane car park will be part of that, and a part of that review, and obviously updates will come when that review is finished. Okay, thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Caulfield. Does Councillor Ryan Priest wish to ask a supplementary question?
Only if we've got a time frame for that, so I can go back to businesses and let them know.
I call on Councillor Damien Caulfield to reply to the supplementary question.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. No, we haven't got a time frame on that at the moment, Councillor Priest. As I say, it's work in progress. So as soon as we finish that, then you'll be one of the first to know. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Caulfield. I now invite other members to indicate if they have any questions for the Leader, Cabinet members or chairs. Councillor Elaine Taylor, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. My question is to our housing officer, housing Cabinet member, Laura Taylor-Childs. Earlier we heard from Laura the excuses for the situation of our social housing. Can you please tell me, or the whole of the council, just how many empty homes there are currently in our housing stock? Again, what is the number of residents on the waiting list? We have residents desperate for social housing, yet we seem to just let these properties deteriorate to the point that the cost is then untenable and the said property is sold off as a void. I have to ask, what is the strategy or the thinking behind the decision for all these houses just to be left lying empty? What is happening within the Housing and Maintenance Department whereby it is taking so long to turn these houses round in a shorter period of time? Residents have contacted me on issues concerned that some of these properties in their wards have been empty, not just for months, years. I despair trying to explain this situation to our residents.
Councillor Taylor-Charles to respond, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Taylor, for your question. It's a very valid question and impacts many of our wards. We are currently going through a programme of disposals to deal with our high-cost voids to make sure we can see that return of investment to be able to improve and increase our housing stock. In terms of the statistics, I can get that to you as a written reply. I haven't got the figures right off the top of my head. We've also been looking at improving our planned works programme as well to make sure that we are liaising properly with tenants to understand their obligations as our tenants and our obligations as a landlord to make sure that we are implementing large-scale new works such as kitchens, bathrooms, roofing repairs, because those are the things that cause high-cost voids, and historically we have been weaker on entry when we've had long-term tenants where then we see the end of their tenancy come up and we have a high-cost void on our hands. So we're doing a lot of work in making sure that we communicate with tenants properly as well to make sure we prevent that in the future.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor-Charles. Councillor Taylor, do you wish to have a supplementary?
Yes. Alongside this, can you tell me why it is taking so long for a turnaround of properties? Just in my ward, there is a bungalow that it is 7 months down the line. It has been allocated. It is still ongoing for the work to be done. Why is it taking so long? Where is the breakdown in our system?
Councillor Taylor-Charles to respond, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll take the specific case from you as well, if you wouldn't mind just sending that information over so I can get you the specifics on that property. In terms of void turnaround times, we've actually reduced that. A lot of work has been done in the past couple of years on how we actually work with our voids, and we've reduced it by around about 20 days, and that's still going to continue to fall as well, especially when we're looking at getting rid of a lot of our high-cost voids through our disposals programme. We will see that average void date plummet rapidly, so we'll make sure we keep you up to date. And I do urge anyone who's got queries over specific properties to get in touch with us, and we can make sure that we fill you in properly so you can fully inform community members that are asking you the questions.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor-Charles. Councillor Sean Keasy, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Question to Councillor Bevan, just returning to the Community Forum funding briefly. Councillor Caulfield attended the Dudley North Forum. It got very passionate, and Councillor Caulfield made a very lengthy statement about what was going on. In terms of the Community Forum, he was very clear, he was adamant, because he was asked on a number of occasions, has the Community Forum funding stopped? Now, Councillor Caulfield's answer was no, it's been frozen, it's still there. It's also now been intimated by Councillor Kettle and Councillor Borley that actually, no, it's not been stopped, it's coming back. But I couldn't get clear in my own head from your answer earlier, where you were talking about your colleagues getting excited, what the actual answer was. So, number one, did Councillor Caulfield mislead the residents of Dudley North at the Dudley North Forum? And number two, yes or no, is any form of community forum coming back? Because it's something that's in the budget that in order for me to make a decision on, I need a definite answer. Thank you.
Councillor Damien Caulfield to respond. Apologies, Councillor Ian Bevan to respond.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I don't really want to have to go through the answer that I gave earlier. I wasn't present at the Dudley North Forum. I can't comment on what was said and what wasn't. I do believe, however, that I've made the position perfectly clear tonight. Regarding whether community forums continue, that is a different matter to the Community Forum Fund Awards. I'm not sure what it is you're asking there. The round of community forums will go ahead as planned. They're underway, and we're already planning for the next ones. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Bevan. Councillor Keasy, do you have a supplementary question?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. What was that? I asked you very specific questions. Did Councillor Caulfield mislead the residents of Dudley North when he said the community forum funding would return? Right, you did. I was there. There were others there as well. Madam Mayor, I'm trying to ask a question. Thank you. And number two, is the community forum funding going to return in June? Because we've got a decision to make. I've got a decision to make. Yes, it's coming back, as has been said, or no, it's not. Are you sticking with your budget papers or making it up as you go along? So, number one, misled, yes or no. Number two, is it coming back, yes or no? Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Ian Bevan to respond.
Mayor. So your second question, Councillor Keasy, you've changed it now to reflect the funding. In the first time you stood up, you asked me about the forums. You're now asking me about the forum funding. I made my statement to Council earlier on, and I stand by that. I cannot possibly comment on what Councillor Caulfield said at the Dudley North Forum because I was not there. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Bevan. Councillor Simon Phipps, please.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. My question is to Councillor Caulfield. Colleagues and I have been campaigning for the average speed camera enforcement zone on the A458 between Lye and Cradley to be extended to cover the Stairbridge Road in Hales-Owen. Despite being given an indication that we should expect some positive news over a year ago, we're now told that any new average speed cameras are delayed until a new joint working agreement is signed between local authorities and West Midlands Police. Could the Cabinet member update the Council as to the current status of these discussions? Specifically, when can we expect to see new speed camera deployments finally be unblocked from the bureaucratic red tape that is stopping them?
Thank you, Councillor Phipps. Councillor Caulfield to respond, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Phipps, for your question. Yeah, I'm quite happy to update members on the position with the cameras at the moment. I'm not sure whether you're already aware, but Dudley's speed camera scheme is data-led. So with that in mind, fixed cameras would be the preferred option. For Dudley Council to run a standalone average speed camera scheme would actually swallow up the whole highways safety budget for the whole year. So as the discussions have gone on, West Midlands Police have changed their steer now. That they want their mindset now is that they actually want a one scheme for the whole of the West Midlands, and they want a full agreement for that. So we're actually having weekly meetings with other adjoining councils, the West Midlands Combined Authority and West Midlands Police, to discuss how this programme is going to be delivered. So at the moment, until that discussion is finished and a borough-wide, a West Midlands-wide decision has been made, we've currently got a 12-month interim policy in place, which will then run until the final decision is brought forward. And we have a report going to Cabinet in March to highlight the financial risks to the Council if we're to take on this policy on our own, and to seek agreement to join in the West Midlands-wide plan. That answers your question, Councillor Phipps.
Thank you, Councillor Caulfield. Councillor Phipps, do you have a supplementary question?
Yes. There you go. Thank you very much, Councillor Caulfield, for your response. It's very helpful in enlightening me as to what's going on right now, because that information has been particularly difficult to get out of, in particular, West Midlands Police, who are currently trying to obfuscate in a freedom of information request I've had to put in to try and find out what's going on with the average speed camera scheme. Just want to ask some clarifying points on the response that's been provided. Just to confirm, it was West Midlands Police that has decided that they did not want to continue with the successful, as I understand it, scheme that we had been implementing over the last few years, and that is the reason why the Stourbridge Road camera scheme has been held up. That's the first clarification. The second clarification is, you mentioned with regard to an interim policy, I'm guessing that will not involve the installation of any new cameras to expand existing schemes, but if we could confirm that, I'm guessing that would be the case given the fact that it was outlined that we don't have the financial capability to take this entirely on ourselves, which I totally accept. And finally, the final point of clarification I'd like to have is if we're having weekly meetings with West Midlands Police and other local authorities, how long can we expect to be waiting for an agreement to be made? It's great that they're having weekly meetings, but I've now been waiting for over 6 months to try and get some answers as to what's going to happen with this joint agreement. So if we are having those weekly meetings, I would hope that we're seeing sufficient progress. And if we're not, I'd put an appeal in to ask him to go along to those meetings, find out what's happening and see if we can get this moving forward. And thank you once again for your first answer, and I will await the second. Thank you.
Councillor Caulfield to respond, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you again, Councillor Phipps. Yes, you're quite right. It's West Midlands Police that have changed the goalposts on us again now. So they want a West Midlands-wide agreement. So all the work that was done before now has been sidelined. So that's made a massive delay. So as you've asked, at the moment, as it stands, no, there won't be any. That will mean there won't be any more cameras added at this moment. And the time frame that we're getting, because obviously it's West Midlands wide, is 12 months, and I think that's why the interim agreement has been put in place. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Caulfield. Councillor Jackie Howell.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. Could I ask the Cabinet Member for Adult Social Care to look into the issue of those that have agreed to pay charges for home call? paying as of December 23, I believe, whilst those who have refused still in many cases have access to the kit and are paying nothing. I don't decry those who can't or won't pay, far from it, but it is not right that those who have had to agree are paying whilst others continue to benefit for free. That should have been addressed before charging commenced. Can Councillor Rogers investigate this matter urgently, please? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cowell. Councillor Rogers to respond, please.
Thank you, Councillor. Yes, I'll investigate. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Cowell, do you have a supplementary question? Thank you. Councillor Ryan Priest.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. My question, I think, is for the Cabinet Member for Public Health, but as always, whoever's best. Dudley's got an ageing population, and this council has a duty to make sure people are fit and healthy as they grow older. One way they can do that is by using the borough's leisure centres, but currently the price of membership is not competitive with private providers. Now, I understand that one of the reasons for that is that the gyms subsidise the pools. I dispute whether or not that's fair, but I understand that that's the reasoning. If we can't split that membership so that people can be a member of one or the other, could the authority consider using part of the public health grant to fund discounted membership for elderly residents?
Thank you, Councillor Priest. Councillor Councillor Atkins to respond, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll take that because leisure centres fall under my portfolio. Yeah, we've seen a rise in the cost of swim sessions. There are a number of discounted schemes for means-tested residents to ensure that the most vulnerable residents have got access to swim facilities. There is already a swim-only membership available, which offers a heavily subsidised discount for leisure users. If you want a breakdown of the costs and the memberships available, I'm happy to supply that to you. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Atkins. Councillor Ryan Priest, do you have a supplementary question?
I think more so than the swim-only membership, what I'm concerned about is there not being a gym-only membership. But again, I accept that that's the reasoning in how much each costs to fund. Just a commitment that you'll look into whether or not the public health grant can be repurposed in that way to provide a discount for elderly residents. And I accept that there is means-tested discounts available, but actually with charges going up on nearly everything, with inflation as high as it is, there are people who are struggling outside of those tested means.
Councillor Atkins to respond.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, I understand what you're saying. There are a number of available options for residents based solely on age, social prescribing through the NHS, Action Heart, gym memberships, etc. throughout the borough. I'll look into the rest of what you said as I can.
Thank you, Councillor Atkins. Councillor Sean Kesey, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm not sure whether this is for Councillor Bevan or Councillor Bradley. I was informed yesterday that our annual celebration of Ida Hobbit, International Day Against Homophobia, Biphobia and Transphobia, which apparently I bang on about all the time according to a local MP, but there you go. Apparently it's been cancelled. All it is some chairs, a sound system and some speakers. Do you believe that that is really a good way of saving money by throwing one particular community under the bus and cancelling what is a very cheap but very meaningful event? Whichever one of you, I'm not sure.
Councillor Bradley to respond, please.
Thank you, Councillor Kesey. Unfortunately, I actually didn't know that it had been cancelled, but what I do know is that it's not what we class as an essential, so it would not go past the spending controls. So it's obviously been to the IDG, the Internal Delivery Group, and it hasn't passed, unfortunately. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Bradley. Councillor Sean Kesey, do you have a supplementary?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm really glad to hear that the one day of the year that means a lot to lesbian, gay, bisexual people hasn't passed your little whatever it is that you decide. And can you reassure me then that every event that Dudley Council put on, every event for every minority and every protected characteristic has also been cancelled due to budgetary cuts? Thank you.
IDG group. That's what I can reassure you on. Thank you again, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Bradley. The 30 minutes allowed for questions has now expired. Any members indicating to ask a question can either send it in writing or raise the question at the next appropriate meeting. There's no other urgent business, so that concludes this meeting of the Council.